Hello there, and welcome to a setup video for wedding and portrait photographers, as well as I'm going to speak a little bit to the hybrid side of my business that I do as well, which includes some video setup. And I'm going to walk you through everything that I would do for a new out-of-the-box Z5 II. This also runs parallel, I would say, to any of the other Nikon cameras. The menu system for the most part is identical. So if you do have a Z6 III or a Z8, a lot of this is completely applicable, but I will be using the Z5 II as an example. So I started with the last month with this camera, and I just want to say congratulations and good job on selecting this. I would say that the Z5 II is a very big moment for Nikon in cameras. It is an incredibly cost-effective full-frame camera, and you get so much for your dollar with this camera. I think it's going to be very difficult for Nikon to sell any Z6 IIIs moving forward, as well as even going up market into the more expensive cameras. This Z5 II is going to give you pretty much everything that you're going to need in terms of content creation, in terms of photography. Maybe if you're getting into really fast-paced sports photography, or you want to be completely silent shutter all the time, maybe those are the two reasons to consider something more expensive. But I would say that the Z5 II really nails it, and nails it at an incredible price point. So here we have a new out-of-the-box Z5 II, and you might notice that there's this crazy thing attached to the hot shoe. This is just a screen recorder, so this is just recording my screen. You shouldn't get this in the box, and if you do, congratulations, because these Atomos Ninja Stars are a little challenging to find now. Loading up the camera, the first thing I do, so it comes in automatic ISO, and as you can see at the bottom of the screen there, it is really, it's a really high ISO. So maybe even this is just a general tip for Nikon. If you want to change out of auto ISO, you don't have to go all the way into menu settings. You can just hold down the ISO button that's up at the top here, and you can move the front wheel. So it lights it up in yellow, and then moving the front wheel, as you can see there, removes the auto ISO. I've also changed, I'm not sure where the dial comes set up to. I'm sure it probably comes to green box auto mode. I've switched my dial up here to go into manual controls, and I shoot manual in most scenes, especially for video I will for sure, but shooting in aperture priority mode, so the A mode, I would be pretty happy with. If you are doing something a little bit more specific, it is possible that you set up some other user settings, so the U1, U2, U3, you can set different settings to all those. One thing I would recommend doing is going through and setting up those user options to include raw photography as well. When I was testing the pre-production version of this camera, I was shooting in manual, and I put the camera in my bag for a minute and it bumped it over into U3. And that actually took me out of raw photography and put me into JPEG only, which was a bit of a bummer. So if you did watch that review, the photos that you saw were JPEGs because I bumped myself out of raw photography mode. I'm gonna leave it in manual mode just so that I can show you a few more of the custom settings that I do. But if you are in any of the other modes, everything should still apply. There are also some things that I don't really use, like the Nikon picture control button that's up top here. I don't really use that. I'll show you what I set my color settings to. So we're gonna flip back into photography mode, and we're gonna move that out of automatic ISO. Now there are two ways to do settings on your camera. You can either hit the menu button in the bottom right, and you can go into the menu system, or the I button up here above your D-pad will actually give you access to a lot of the settings that I'm going to change. And you can actually just use this back wheel, so you don't have to click it or anything. You just highlight whatever you want to change. We'll give you different options. Because I'm shooting RAW and JPEG, which we're gonna set up in just a second here, I shoot everything on just a standard regular profile. In video, I will be using this NL neutral profile, which just gives me a bit more of a flat profile, so I'm able to color grade the footage a little bit better. Since I'm always editing from a RAW file and I'm just using the JPEG essentially as the preview on the back, I'm fine to stay in standard mode. Next, white balance. So this might be something interesting. You can take this tip or not take this tip. I love the look of cloudy and shade white balances. And as a portrait and wedding photographer, I pretty much run all day on either cloudy or shade, depending on the scene. The reasoning for that is even if we are out in the hot sun, my subject or my couple or the group of people, they're always gonna be facing away from the sun. So I'm never, at least for the most part, maybe if I'm getting creative, maybe I'm using some direct sun. For the most part, if I'm just looking for flattering, nice lighting on people, I'm usually in open shade or I have the sun to their back and their face is always in the shade. So I'm essentially white balancing specifically for their face and not for the entire scene. So because of that, when I'm outside, I am on shade or cloudy mode. I find that shade gets a little bit too pinky golden, and cloudy is probably the place where I would stay most of the day. This includes video as well. The one time I will change that, and something that's interesting to know about that I didn't know about for a very long time. So when you are in auto white balance, you actually have bonus options. So you hit the down button on your D-pad and you have some bonus options. So you have keep white, so this will reduce warm colors, keep overall atmosphere, or keep warm lighting colors. So as a wedding and portrait photographer, I actually want to keep all those warm lighting colors. So when I am shooting on auto white balance, which is usually when I get into either a very mixed lighting scene, or if it's a reception where everything is either incandescent bulbs and candlelight, or even I guess LED bulbs now, I like to preserve those warm tones, so I am always in A2. Next up, image quality. So there are a few different options for this, and they kind of hide it, so you have to go to the left there. I shoot everything on RAW and JPEG, and maybe this is a specific weird thing for me, but my internet here is not the fastest internet in the world, and when I get home from a wedding day, and if I've shot 5,000 or 6,000 images, to upload all of the RAW images takes a little while, and I would rather just upload all the JPEGs. I shoot as good as I can in camera all day, so I'm not too worried that if I do have to edit something from those JPEGs, it's usually something like 10 or 15 years from now. I back everything up, all my RAW files on physical hard drives and smart previews eventually, but night of the wedding, I just like to get those JPEGs online. Or if you are transferring something from the camera to your phone, there's a good chance it's going to be the JPEG, so that's why I shoot on that. I also shoot on large. Now, attaching a lens to the camera to show you my autofocus settings, generally how I'm set up, there are a lot of really nice options for us as wedding and portrait photographers when it comes to autofocus. I actually have my two front buttons. So one of these buttons, the FN button, the top and bottom one. So if you hold down the top one, it does white balance. We're gonna override that in a minute and change that up. On the bottom, you see that it lights up the AFA and the focus area there. If you move the front wheel, you move through your focus settings. And you actually limit these, so you can limit how many of these show up. So if you don't want every single one available, you can have it so it only shows up 1 or 2 in the settings, which is really cool. And then moving the back wheel, you go from AFA into manual focus into AFS and AFC. I shoot most of my day like this. So what AFC does, it's autofocus continuous. So if you are tracking someone's face, it is going to stick with them. If you're on AFS, it's going to set up a focus point and you're gonna have to half press to change that focus point. So if somebody's walking towards you, you're gonna have to be on the full shutter and you can't just kind of half press and continue hitting the button. And then AFA makes a choice for you. So whether it goes into AFS if it doesn't believe that the subject is moving, or if it goes into AFC. I just like to tell the camera, and the autofocus is good enough on Nikon now that autofocus continuous will track properly in any situation that I've found. Sometimes it might surprise you, and if it is surprising you and it's not doing what you expect, I like to hold, again, this front button, this front FN button down on the bottom, and I like to move the front wheel into 3D tracking mode, and then I just put this box over top of whoever I wanted to track, and it does an incredible job of tracking that person. You can also, if say for instance, you can see the red box here, so you can customize the size of this red box and also if it's vertical or horizontal. And a reason for this is if you are photographing a ceremony and there's a couple or people coming down the center of the aisle, and you only want the eye detect autofocus to be working within that central area so it's not finding people off to the side. This is the way that I do it. Or you can move it to a box like this if you know you're gonna be going from vertical to horizontal. And you just put this box in the center of the aisle, and you know that anyone that's going to be in that box, the eye autofocus is going to be working great. Most of the day though, I am on wide, all points, AFC. And you'll notice that beside the yellow settings that are lit up there, there's also an animal, a person, and an A. And what that means is it will automatically detect between subjects. So if you are focusing on what it seems, I feel like it prioritizes people. So if there's a person in the scene, it's usually going to prioritize. If there's an animal in the scene, it's also going to subject detect them. Or if it's a plane or a car or a train or anything else that Nikon has geared their autofocus to. If you notice that it's selecting random things in a scene, for some reason it's identifying a bush as a train, maybe just limit it to be people only if you are wedding and portraits. For me though, I'm pretty happy to leave it as all of those, because sometimes my couples get into cars and I wanted to detect that car, or sometimes there's a dog as part of the ceremony and I want to be able to get that quick portrait. And it's one thing that Nikon does. And I think it's something that Sony just started allowing in the A1II to allow that auto subject detect mode, but Nikon's had it for a while now. Now we move into the menus. There's a few things that I change here. So I will change my file naming. If this is a Nikon Z5 II, I will change this to TJ5, so I know it's a Z5. It's also touchscreen, so if you do want to just hit the button down there. That is one thing I changed. And if I do have multiple cameras, I'll just make different file names so that they're not making conflicting files. That I come home from a wedding, I don't want to have two DSC 0001s. I want to have different file names, and same with the video files as well, which is nice. So role played by slot 2, I do backup, so you can do overflow, which means that it's going to fill that first card and then it's going to move on to the second card. For DSLR, I used to use this RAW slot 1 and JPEG slot 2. Now I use backup, so that means it's shooting both the RAW and JPEG file to both of the cards all the time. Image area, we're gonna talk about this in a second, but that's what I set my second function button up front here too. Image quality, we've already done in the I menu. Image size settings, also in the I menu. For raw recording, and if you hit the question mark button that's down at the bottom here, so it's under the negative magnifying glass, it'll actually give you some more details on any of these settings. And it'll actually just tell you straight up that in terms of image quality, high efficiency star is nearly identical to lossless compression. So I'm happy to save a little bit of file size, as well as I find that the files just write to the card a lot faster when you are doing something that's a little bit more compressed. It's less data to get on the card. So I leave it on that and I haven't had any problems. ISO sensitivity, if you are going to be running auto ISO, you can change your settings in here. So you can set up whatever the maximum sensitivity is and automatic shutter speeds. So if you want your auto shutter speed to be something like, you never want to go below 1/100 of a second. There's also, I feel like the default is that it will understand what the lens is, and it seems to try to double that. So if you're shooting a 20mm lens, it's probably going to cap out your shutter speed at a 1/40 of a second, and it won't get much slower than that. And then it'll start increasing ISO. Now, active D-lighting, this is something that I like in both my photography and my video. I set this to normal. On high, it's a little too extreme. Basically what it does is it's not going to be adding additional dynamic range, but it is going to soften out your highlights a little bit. So it's not gonna let them go pure white, and it's gonna try to hold on to them, and again, just in the JPEG, and then bump up the shadows a little bit as well. And I find that D-lighting just gives me a better picture of what my final edit's going to look like, or I can just use the JPEG as my final edit. It's helpful for photography, but it is really helpful for video. And also this is just setting up the photo settings. You have to go into the other menu and do this all again if you want to do it for video. Moving through more settings. So as I mentioned, the subject detect, if you do just want it to be people only, you can set it to people only. And then VR, so for photography, I am happy to leave it on normal. If you are going to be doing some video coverage and you're doing something that actually involves you moving the camera, sport is the way to go. It's not gonna fight you, whereas if you're on normal and you're trying to pan with somebody, it's gonna try to make your camera into a tripod, and you're not gonna be able to smoothly pan with people. Coming down here into video, I set again up, you can change these file names so that they appear at a different spot as well. So if you do want all your files to be your initials and one, so they pop up at the top, so there's a very specific differentiation, you can do that. Destination, so here's the saddest part about Nikon cameras, is that you can only shoot to one card slot. So I hope that they change this. I was really hopeful that they would change that. Like every other brand allows you to shoot video to both cards. Unfortunately with Nikon, it is just one. So I would say do slot one and just know that your video files are only going to be on that card. What that means for you is that you don't have backup redundancy for video. So if you are, if you're shooting a wedding or something that's of real importance, I would say to consider actually putting USB-C cable into this camera and loading it into your computer through the camera rather than popping out the card, because the likely failure point on a memory card is when you're popping it in and out of your camera. So the less you can do that, the better. And if you are shooting video files for a wedding day and you're only on one card, I would recommend loading them off that way. It is equally as fast, I would say, most of the time. Video file type, so I'm pretty happy on 8-bit. The Nikon video files, as they come out of the camera, I will change one thing, the neutral profile, and I am so happy with the way that those files come out that I don't have to do much color correction to them. If you are doing a lot of color correction, maybe consider going up in bits a little bit here. I wouldn't say you have to go into raw mode. If you do have massive giant cards and you want to shoot raw video, you can, but if you're getting everything correct in camera and also being very conscious about your white balance, I don't think you have to be shooting raw video. It's nice to have, but it's not something that I ever use. It's actually crazy that it's in this camera body, to be honest. So one other struggle, so for me, as someone that does a lot of photo video on wedding days, I am always using 4K 60. Unfortunately, 4K 60 with this camera does come with a crop, so an APS-C crop. So my 20mm lens here, I also don't really shoot this as a main lens on wedding days, but you get an APS-C crop on it. So that 20mm lens, all of a sudden you get that 1.5 times. So it's a 30mm lens. If you do go into 4K 60, what I would be doing if I was using this camera for wedding days is I would actually be shooting regular boring HD 60p, and I would be upscaling it from there. The files, everything's in nice focus, so I don't mind upscaling and delivering in 4K from a 1080 file. But if you're just shooting regular 4K and you don't need that higher frame rate, you get no crop on 30p. So for all the footage that I shot in Iceland this week was at 30p and regular 4K, and it looks wonderful. In picture control, you can, so you can basically decouple this. So if you're changing your picture control and you're setting your picture, your JPEGs in photo mode to also be neutral, this will just carry over. I split them up so I'm neutral profile for video and then I'm standard profile for photography. Active D-lighting, as I mentioned, I'm gonna go to normal on that. And then I leave everything else the same. You do if you're in video mode, so exiting out of the menu system, clicking the back button over to video, you do get different options up here on the I menu. And I would first change this, so you can also just hold down the front button to do that. I like AFC a lot better. And I would also be changing your sensitivities. So if you are going to be using a microphone, come off of automatic and go into something that's like maybe around 5 so that things are a little bit more standard. Basically, it is a nice preamp in here, but if you are leaving it on automatic and you have a microphone and the room gets really quiet, that microphone and the camera together are going to dial up the gain and they're going to try to find sound wherever it's happening, which makes that static come in and fade out and just makes a not great experience when it comes to the listener. Electronic VR I leave off, but if you do want to just mimic a tripod, that is a good option. And as I mentioned, that I'm normally on normal for VR, but if I do want to pan with people or if I'm doing something that I wouldn't be doing typically on a wedding day, I am happy to go into sport mode because it does work pretty good. Back into the menu system, now coming down here into the custom settings menu. I actually don't change a whole lot down here other than controls. So I do this for both photography and video. I will come into custom controls shooting, and I will change this FN1 button from white balance into choose image area. So what I'm doing is I'm allowing that button to select either I'm in full frame mode or I'm in crop mode. I like this a lot for if I'm shooting a prime lens or if it's a ceremony and I just want to get a little bit closer. Essentially what you're doing is you're just cropping inside the camera. You could easily do this in post-production, but for me, I use a lot of AI tools like Imagine here to do my editing. So the better I can set them up with a final image, the more accurate it's going to be to what I want. I use choose image area because I want to press and also select the image area that I want. There is an option up here that makes this into just a one button press. So you press it one time and it goes into DX mode. You press it one time and it goes back to full frame mode. I wish there was another option where whenever you're holding the button that you're in DX mode and then as soon as you release the button, you go back to full frame mode. That would be amazing because I find that I just accidentally leave my camera sometimes in DX mode. So I like to have another little dummy filter on here. And now when I am in photography and I hit that top function button, I can choose the image area. So I just use these two right here. And you can see if you're in full frame mode or DX mode in the top right-hand side of the screen. Just don't forget that you are in DX mode whenever you do change to DX mode. And then you have to go into video controls and also customize that same thing. So I'm just doing the exact same thing in video mode. And now it's set up. And I also go to the very top here and I will format both of my memory cards. You probably won't run into problems if the cards have been formatted in another camera, but I think it's just best practice to do them in the camera that you're currently using. But usually when you turn the camera on, you get a time, zone, and date. This was a borrowed unit from Nikon, so maybe someone's already done this. And you just set up the time and date quickly whenever you first get the camera. That is my setup for the Nikon Z5 II, as well as pretty much any other Nikon camera. And if you do have any questions, feel free to put them down below, but hopefully this was a good overview for what I do. Also in terms of settings for my actual photography and video, I am pretty much wide open on most lenses most of the time. Nikon make incredible lenses and I am so happy with every single one that I have and every single one that I've used. So I'm happy to shoot them wide open because they just look absolutely beautiful. There's also a number of third-party lenses now being released for the Nikon Z system, which I love to see. The Tamron 35-150 is a lens that I use for pretty much every ceremony. And I'll put a link up here if you do want to go see some behind the scenes wedding days with the Nikon system. Thanks for watching. Any questions, feel free to put them down below and I'll see you again next time.